Question number 3, Leader of the Opposition.
Speaking to the Prime Minister, does he have confidence in all his ministers?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, yes.
Honourable David Shearer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Given that he previously admitted that the data used to overhaul Christchurch schools was inaccurate, has the Minister of Education assured him the data is now 100% accurate, and if so, what value does he place on her assurance?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I think the member is paraphrasing me, but I think what is true in the process was that there was some disagreement between the ministry's data and the school's data. As that process was carried out over the course of the last 4 or 5 months, there was an agreement on the data, and for the most part actually in the favour of the ministry. So yes, I'm confident now that on the best data we have available to us, the decisions have been based that were announced by the minister yesterday.
Leader of the Opposition, David Shearer.
Why are schools such as Manning Intermediate closing when their roles are predicted to increase? And will this make him focus on re-evaluating that data?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
I can't give you answers to specific schools. You'd be better to put those down to the Minister directly, but they're actually in a number of press releases that she's announced. But all I can say in terms of making the decisions and recommendations that the Minister made, she put into consideration a number of factors, and they included demographics of where people were going to live, damage to the buildings, damage to the land, and where the likelihood was for the best schools. I will say this, in the course of the proposals now subject to consultation, there in effect are 13 schools that will be closed in the Christchurch area. At the same time, and over a slightly longer period of time, there will be 15 schools that will either be new or rebuilt.
David Shearer.
In light of that answer, given that intermediate schools will be closing in 10 months' time, is he seriously suggesting that children are better off in prefabricated buildings rather than the schools that they are already in?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Well, Mr. Speaker, what I think is true is that parents wanted certainty. What is also true is that once a decision is made, and that we've got to go through a consultation process that closes, submissions of which close on 28th of March from memory, then I think at that point, if a decision is made to close a school, it's highly likely actually parents will start moving schools, pupils away from those schools. So I think it does make sense to start transitioning to the new environment.
Supplementary
Mr. Speaker, that was really a question about whether he believed that children were better off in prefab buildings rather than the schools that they are already in at the moment.
I think the member needs to acknowledge that the primary question he put down was a very broad question to the Prime Minister, and now he's getting quite specific into some aspects of an education announcement that should be more correctly directed to the Minister of Education. I think the Prime Minister adequately answered your question. Further supplementaries. Supplementary question.
Given that in September, the 4th of September last year, the Prime Minister personally said that he would read through all of the submissions from parents and schools regarding school closures, does he believe now that prefab buildings that they will be transitioned to is a better alternative than staying where they are?
Right Honourable
Mr. Speaker, in some cases, yes. I mean, the damage is significant. I'm not sure all kids that would be leaving a school that has been closed in the next sort of 10-month period will be going to prefabs. But I think what is true is you have to take a medium-term view here. And over the medium term, this is a government that will be spending $1 billion in Christchurch, building 15 new schools or rebuilding. And in reality, he is a member of a political party that knows what it's like to close schools because he's got the gold medalist sitting behind him who closed 281.
Supplementary.
Mr. Speaker.
Order. That is certainly not a helpful comment from Mr Mallard.
Thank you. Does he not concede that closing schools in Christchurch following a natural disaster where kids require and rely on stability and security from their schools is manifestly different from closing schools under the Labor government?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, this is the logic that the Leader of the Opposition is wanting New Zealanders to believe, that on the back of a catastrophic earthquake in Christchurch that has dramatically changed the demographic patterns of where Cantabrians live, where there is huge damage to the schools involved and where the land is substantially damaged, nothing should happen. If that is his thinking and his definition of leadership, he will remain the leader of the opposition until David Cunliffe finally gets the other 20 votes he needs.
Supplementary question, David Shearer.
Mr. Prime Minister, can he have confidence in his minister who proposes increase in class sizes, who unlawfully closes Salisbury School, who approved the disastrous Novo Pay rollout, and who has bungled in the last 5 months the Christchurch schools process?
Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, well, they are the views of the Leader of the Opposition. They are not my views. And in fact, to paraphrase the political commentary on TV last night, I think she acquitted herself very well in Christchurch yesterday. And by the way, from what I could see today in the House, it was like 100-0 to Hekia Parata, 0 to Materia Ture, who got it handed to her.
Order. Question number 4, Dr. Cam Calder.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To the Minister of Education.